Saddle up your horses.
The mocks that you guys read for the last month, what do you want me to say? It's embarrassing sometimes.
And with that, we have another installment of the Manely Broncos podcast. It's just it seems fitting to lead off with the mic drop of mic drops from the legend himself, Sean Payton. So it was a fun NFL draft. I mean, I'll just say that. I mean, it's certainly one of the more eventful ones, and I mean, we should have, come to expect it. And in the sense of, you had just a lot of stuff to unpack, right? Like you had the Shador angle. A lot of different teams evaluated things a lot differently, right? Obviously, the Broncos were no exception. You had strategy, which I think would probably fall in the line of the Broncos. And then you also had, teams that were just very kind of like, I don't know, let's go take this player, kind of angle to it. So nonetheless, it was fun. I'm glad it's over with. I can sleep for 72 hours. But gentlemen, how are you doing? Brandon, you doing good? I know it seems like you got your head above water with all the work that you're doing. You're muted, Brandon.
I'm not currently using my second monitor to do work right now. That is not what's happening. Other than that, I'm good. This was an interesting draft.
Yeah. I hate it, contrary to some people's opinions, like Jordan on a certain pick. But nonetheless, Jordan, all in all, it was a good draft for you. I mean, you enjoyed it.
I did enjoy it. I enjoy every draft. The first round pick did shock everybody, but at the end, when everybody get their wits together, it does turn out that's going to be
it gives you about 72 hours for it to kind of settle.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, again, like how Sean Payton said, all the mocks are embarrassing. I mean, everybody had, including us, had them taking a running back. Everybody had them taking a running back, maybe even a receiver or even a tight end. No one even thought of the possibility of a corner. But once the dust kind of settled in, you come to a realization that he is talent-wise a top 10, top 15 talent in the draft. I mean, it was a good pick for the Broncos. So, but yeah, I mean, I love the draft always.
Makes you wonder if the specific reason why he didn't take a running back is because he saw the mocks that had us taking a running back.
Maybe
I know that's
every
not true,
scenario. But maybe he went through every scenario we listed and just like, yeah, all these suck.
But so
it is kind of a little bit of a repeat of the PS2 draft where it's like, everyone thinks you're going to take someone else.
Yeah.
Take a different position, and then you just take the best corner in the draft because he falls to you. And I mean, that turned out pretty well. So I'm not mad at it. I do think like when you look at positional value, and we'll talk about the picks, but I think corner, I do believe the corner is more of a valuable position than running back.
Agree.
But with how much of a need running back was, and I think it's still a little bit of a need. We'll get there. But I mean, I can't hate that pick, but I can question the rest of them.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can, Brandon.
And before we dive into,
I even talked about how much I like Jedi Baron on a previous episode, just to toot my own horn. But go ahead.
Well, and before we dive into any of that, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. And when you're in the early stages of the NFL draft, the early stages of the draft, like even post, I don't think it's a wrong opinion because you're still in that evaluation phase and we haven't seen it on the field yet, right? But I would just preface it with the PSA of just got to let it play out, right? You just got to let it play out, and we'll certainly see how it unfolds. So nonetheless, I thought it was exciting. I think we should probably lead off with the biggest one of the day, or I should say of that weekend, and it wasn't a Bronco pick. It was obviously the one that made national news, and that was the Shedeur Sanders thing. It really seems like there was a NFL view league-wide of the player that Shedeur Sanders was. And then when you kind of peel back the layer of it, right? You peel back the layer of it, it seems like he didn't handle all the interviews all that well, and it seemed like everything was really, not set up the greatest for him himself going into, the league and all these interviews. And when you and then when you look at it from the standpoint of it also allowed us to kind of see, and not all of them, but to kind of see some of these draft analysts in a bit of a different light. I think that the one specific one that I think of when it comes to Shedeur Sanders was everybody talking like specifically about the combine, right? Oh, why isn't he working out at the combine? Why wasn't doing any workouts, right? Well,
he did the same thing at the Senior Bowl, I think.
Clearly, he was trying to master the interview process, which, to be fair, the combine and interview process is like one of the biggest things you can absolutely do as a prospect. But it's what happened the week before. That's the part that makes this incredibly worse. You go into the Shrine Bowl, you don't.
It was the Shrine Bowl is what it was. Yeah.
You don't even play in the game. You don't even play in practices, and basically making it seem like you are a top 5 pick. And then to spin it to Jordan for the floor on this one, I think it's my opinion. I don't know whether or not it was the video itself, but I have to think that the video that surfaced between Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders played a bit of a big role in how teams evaluate players, because they're in the public image, right? They are in the image of the NFL, or soon to be in the image of the NFL. And Shedeur's asking a genuine question, like what are your hobbies outside of football? And Cam Ward, knowing he's under that microscope, says, "Football. Football's my only hobby." And Shedeur goes on and proceeds to be a bit annoyed that football's not as or is his only hobby. So I think it goes to show you where their heart was. And I know that sounds so bad to say, but it really kind of got a glimpse of where their heart really is when it comes to the sport of football. And I think it really kind of shed a lot of light of where even the media analysts are.
Yeah, I mean, I can already sense a lot of people are going to be watching this are not going to like me today, because we're going to talk about something later on in the show, but also now with Shedeur Sanders. I know there's a lot of Colorado fans, but man, when he kept on falling, and then the reports when Todd McShay came out and he said, which by the way, he has a great show on YouTube and I highly recommend it to everybody.
We love the Broncos draft.
Yeah, and he's just so good. And he even mentioned that, maybe when you keep falling in the draft, because maybe when that one team does a private interview with you and then they give you an install because the next morning they're going to work you out, you don't even go over the install. And then the workout comes the next morning and you're getting called out for not knowing anything, and then you get mad. Yeah, maybe that rubs teams the wrong way, So just hearing things like that, I mean, everybody has seen his antics on and off the field, whether the good ones and the bad ones. I mean, I name several of them just off the top of my head. Listen, I know he's a good person at heart, but again, the antics in front of everybody, and that's not going to bode well with NFL teams. Because, again, you are the franchise guy as a quarterback, and obviously teams did not want to risk that in day one and not even in day two. So, yeah, I have a thing about that. I know everybody loves Shedeur in Colorado. Even got number retired, which is insane to me, but that's another topic for another day. But, man, Yes, I was surprised he kept falling. I think everybody was. I think if you say no, you weren't surprised he was falling, I think you were lying.
Well, everybody thought it was a hot take that falling out of the first round was the hottest take.
Yeah, so
clearly the hottest take was possibly out of the draft entirely.
Yeah, and then also the Browns just having no clue what to do. But yeah, it that whole Shedeur Sanders thing, it's so many levels to.
There's levels to it.
The conversation that, yeah.
I didn't hear about that install. Who did you say had that? A video on that?
Todd McShay mentioned it on on his show, and it was with the Giants, who, were interested in quarterbacks and obviously doing all their details and homework on them, and you're there just
looking pretty. Yeah,
I did hear that his interview with the Giants was bad. I didn't hear any details about it, but I do think just with the whole Shedeur thing, yes, it's surprising, but the more details that come out about it, like, it's not that surprising. And I don't know enough about him or the situation to have much of an opinion on this. But to me, like, when you're doing things like that, the specific thing that I had heard was that he kind of was shrugging off interviews. That's not the term that was used. I can't remember exactly what was used, but just kind of like almost like it's not a big deal, right? Doesn't even really care. Doesn't care to put an effort in it. And obviously I have no idea how true that is. But to me, like, I think, you talk about him not participating in the combine and like focusing more on the interview side of things. And then I question whether that was actually happening. And then everything with him not practicing at the was it Shrine Bowl?
Shrine Bowl.
Not participating in that. Like, to me, this whole thing kind of feels like, and another thing that kind of goes with this as well is he didn't even hire an agent.
Yep.
So everything about this just to me is kind of flashing. I hate to say arrogance, but just like, I think he just went into this thinking like, I'm hot shit. Like, pardon my French, but I'm a Sanders. I'm good. Like, I'm going to be, the number 2 pick in the draft, when really all of this stuff they just go through is really all of it's a job interview. And if you don't do well at the job interview, you're not going to get the job. Like, if you don't know the playbook, if you're not wanting to put an effort in the meetings, if you're not willing to put an effort with the combine, if you don't even want to like hire a agent / in this example, career coach, who's going to basically tell you like, hey, this is what you need to do. Here's like the perception on you. Here's where people are thinking you're going to be going, instead of just assuming you're going to go as high as you maybe thought that you would. It just seems like when that's the process you go through, you can't be surprised at the results. That's just kind of what this says to me. And again, I don't know enough details about it, but the only reason I think the Browns took him is because I think I heard Jimmy Haslam got involved and was basically like, no, you have to take him, even though they just took Dylan Gabriel.
It wouldn't shock me because
Well,
there's been some stuff that I've heard about him manipulating the process with Deshaun Watson.
Oh yeah, he was the Deshaun Watson one too. Yep.
And everything, and so it wouldn't shock me. What's crazy though is, of all the situations, the fact that he's a Brown, and the fact that he was taken the 5th round, where it could have been a situation where they easily could have had this Sanders situation in the 5th round with Travis Hunter on the roster. That's the other angle of it that is just crazy to me. And to be fair, the Browns actually had a good deal with the Jaguars of basically getting 2 first-round picks out of that.
They set themselves up well for next year.
Yeah,
sure.
So to be fair, they did kind of set themselves up. But what makes it all just so weird was taking Gabriel, the pick before, and I think for me, it's like there's an entirely different process of how taking 2 quarterbacks work, right? And more often than not, when you see it happen, it's you take the quarterback in one of your first 2 picks, and then later, that's when you're going to be taking the quarterback, not, taking the quarterback of Dylan Gabriel and then your very next pick. You take the other. That is like, to basically put it this way, that is like one of the worst fantasy football strategies, like, to ever do, is to take a quarterback and then a quarterback with your very next pick, right? and I guess the only way they would ever work is if you're in a 2-quarterback league, fantasy football. That's about the only thing. But I just, the other angle of this, and you gotta call it out, was I did not like how Kuiper handled the whole situation.
No, that was ridiculous.
Like, basically making a point that, and looking like a complete idiot in the process, saying, that, the NFL does not know how to evaluate quarterbacks, which, bro, you've been evaluating NFL teams longer than we have, right? Like much longer than we have. And we already have an understanding that the NFL evaluates quarterbacks a little bit better. I mean, there's hit rates of Brock Purdy in the 7th round, Tom Brady, Dak Prescott, and sure, they're crapshoots, but the fact is they're taking that chance, and then it's up to that specific player to also develop it with that said team, and it's working. You know what I mean? Like, it is just wild to me, that here we are talking about the NFL doesn't develop quarterbacks, and there are really good examples, even in mid to like 3rd to 5th rounds of even other examples.
I'm glad you bring this up because I actually saw this today. There's only 3 starting quarterbacks in the NFL right now that were day 3 picks. And there's also there's like the undrafted component of it all. But when you hear about people saying the NFL doesn't know how to evaluate quarterbacks, I'm starting to believe that that's just not true. Like, I don't think that the NFL doesn't know how to evaluate quarterbacks. I think evaluating quarterbacks is the hardest thing you could possibly do in this sport and possibly in any professional sport that exists. And you're not always going to get it right. But like, to me, there being so few quarterbacks that you hit on that late, like there's a reason they go that late. There's a reason you don't hit on this because they're not usually good enough to be starters in the NFL. Like, that's just, and that's what the teams that have evaluated them as. So I'm actually starting to push back a little bit on the like NFL teams don't know how to evaluate quarterbacks. Are there teams that are better than others? Sure. But like, yeah, it's a crapshoot. It's the hardest thing you can possibly, like, it's just the hardest thing you can ask anyone to do in probably professional sports. And you're not always going to get it right. But when you do get it right, you're like, it's usually going to be because it like the guy stood out above the rest. It's like, this is, clearly a starter. Like they separate themselves, right? When you get into day 3, you get into 4, 5, 6, 7 rounds and undrafted free agents. It's just more of luck. I mean, like, yeah, you can still hit on a guy, and maybe it's just like a situation where he's a little bit smaller and that's the reason he fell, or there was an injury, or, there's definitely things that can be overcome. But I just think the NFL is still the best quarterback evaluator.
Still, yeah.
That doesn't mean they're good. They're great at it, but they're still the best.
Right.
Anyway.
Well, and even then, like, look at last year, right? And we'll get into the Broncos draft here after this. But like, you look at last year, there were 6 quarterbacks taken in the first 12 picks, right? And that's not something you see every day, right? And everybody loved that QB class. And I think there is a decent chance, like 3/4 of them, if not all of them, have a decent career in the NFL. Like, I mean, you have Caleb Williams, who's already set up now with, Ben Johnson in Chicago. You have J.J. McCarthy in a very good situation, it seems, with, Kevin O'Connell. We already saw what happened with Jaden Daniels paired with Cliff Kingsbury. Obviously, God bless Bo Nix under Sean Payton. And,
Drake May just went from the worst situation to one of the best.
Exactly.
Because they murdered this draft.
And then you have Michael Penix, who, granted, it was a very small sample size, but he looked dang good in the short amount of time that he came in and basically benched the mega millionaire Kirk Cousins when he came in there. So it certainly seems like it's got the makings of it. And just if it gets to that point and Tyler Shuck doesn't pan out in New Orleans, there is still a guy by the name of Spencer Rattler who is a bit of a cerebral player. I know what you're going to say, Jordan.
No,
but But he asked people from that draft process, and he was a bit of a cerebral type quarterback. So it has the makings to hit, and that is something you don't see every day. So to your point, Brendan, about like the NFL evaluating quarterbacks, like they are really good at their job. It's kind of like
just a hard job.
It's kind of like when Rocky hits his half court shot. Like he is really good at it, but if you look at the percentages of how often he makes that shot, it's still well below like the 20% or whatever, like the what you probably would expect as far as like the half court shots.
Shout out Rocky. Did not know Rocky was getting shout out today.
Dude, Rocky makes, let's just do some math that's gonna make me cry here. 14 times more money than I do, and he's a mascot. That's great. Love that. It's fantastic.
Love that for us. Reminder to everybody before we dive into this NFL draft content for the Broncos draft, make sure you hit that subscribe button for the MHRT Network page on YouTube. And make sure you follow us. We are actually going live, not just on YouTube, but also on each other's X pages, X Twitter pages. We're going live on my Twitter page, Brandon's Twitter page, and Jordan's Twitter page right now. So make sure you go over there. And just for full disclosure, Brandon is on private for not just himself reasons, but he's protecting himself from an NBA player by the name of Brandon Miller. So if you do
I might turn it off. But it's still happening. But
if you do follow him and you're asking for a follow back, it might be a while.
Stop tagging me in your terrible NBA picks and bets that you make. I'm not the same player.
But thank you
no
guys.
No one that does this will hear that. But
and that means also your X Twitter comments or whatever will show up on this stream. So just full disclosure there. So if you guys are watching on that stream, all right. How would you guys want to work this? You guys want to work from the back down, or do you guys want to work from the first round all the way to the seventh round? How do you guys want to do it? All right. What's up, Marky? Thanks for hopping in. Thanks for showing that support. All right.
Dude,
so
Boggins, I'm so pissed, man. All of our rivals took all of my favorite players.
Specifically,
I was gonna
say specifically the Chargers. I feel like the Chargers, like the one,
Chiefs and the Raiders too.
But I meant like if you were going to talk like a famous Bronco mock draft, the Chargers nailed it.
That's true.
Like,
yep.
But I mean, I hate it. Chargers got Trey Harris. The Chiefs got Jalen Royals, who I love. They also got Omar Norman Lott. I didn't realize he had some off the field stuff, so that makes some more sense. Raiders got Jack Besh. I hate it here.
Chiefs also.
So all my favorite players go to not my team. Just the teams in my team's division.
Chiefs also got Brashard Smith.
Brashard Smith too.
In the seventh round. Seventh round.
Yeah.
All right. So, but nonetheless, let's dive right in to this NFL draft discussion from the Broncos side. Again, I love the draft actually from the Broncos side, but I think it's one of those things like I was staying true to it in a sense because I find it so funny. This draft cycle was like, I'm going in open-ended. I am going in open-minded. I'm pretty content with whichever direction that the Broncos are going to go with, right? And I'm not saying you guys, by any means, but it's just like you look at just the way things unfolded, and all of a sudden it happens in a completely different light, and everybody's losing their gosh dang minds, over it. Like it is kind of crazy to me. So let's start first with the first round pick because it's the best example of this. Jahdae Barron, who was, and I'm so glad we at least talked about the scenario, whether it was like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or whatever. We talked at least about that scenario. But it happened. The Broncos took is it Jahdae or is it Zadeh Barron? I've heard like a variety of different ones. I think it's Jahdae Barron.
Jahdae Barron is the only way that I've heard.
Yeah. They took Jahdae Barron from the University of Texas, who was coached by another Joseph brother, not just Mickey Joseph, the brother of Vance Joseph, who coached Trey Palmer, but Terry Joseph, one of the fast up and coming coaches, actually not just in college football, but in the NFL. I think he actually went back to college from the New Orleans Saints to the Texas Longhorns, and ended up coaching Barron. And I think if you look at it from the standpoint of, yes, Jordan, it may have pissed us off that Emeka Egbuka was taken a pick before.
Man.
but I think that if you actually look at it and you peel it back, I think it had nothing to do with Egbuka. I think it was more of the fact that they did not think that Barron was going to be picked, or that Barron was going to be going off the board early and that he wasn't even going to be available, right? And so I think it was because they thought Tampa was probably that spot, like the ending of where Barron was going to be falling. And
Tampa taking a wideout was crazy.
Yeah, I love Egbuka, but him going kind of there was a bit of a head scratcher. But they take Barron, and now you're talking about a secondary like that went from, and our secondary is great, but it is literally now 5 deep, like at the position. And obviously there are certain questions and certain things, we ourselves are speculating. We'll dive into it here, but about Jaquan McMillan, but you're so versatile at that position, and you're 5 deep in terms of PS2, Riley Moss, Jahdae Barron, Jaquan McMillan, and oh, by the way, there's a guy who got an interception on Justin Herbert on Thursday Night Football and played it quite perfectly in Chris Abrams' drain. So they are 5 deep at this position, and they added arguably the Talanoa Hufanga of cornerbacks in Jahdae Barron.
It's scary.
I mean, before we ended our last episode before the draft, I even said, like, keep an eye out for corner, because you know how bad the defense looked when Riley Moss was injured. And like, even McMillan, I mean, I love McMillan. I think he's a great slot corner.
We are McMillan fan club.
The contract we're paying him, but like, he's not elite. Jahdae Barron is elite. So you put him in that secondary. Like, if you want to truly have the best defense in football, like, you have to continue to add to that secondary, because as good as it was, like, there were definitely upgrades to be made. I mean, JQM could have, like, he was okay. He could have been better. He did give up a lot of yards last year. 413 yards. And when Riley Moss went down, we desperately missed him, and he came, and then like he came back and he wasn't. Oh yeah, Levi Wallace. He who shall not be named. And he came back and didn't look as great. So I definitely think like it was a sneaky need. And Barron is truly a unicorn, because you can kind of play him anywhere in that secondary. So like, if we lose Moss again, he can play outside. If we want to just start him in the slot and McMillan is going to be our depth piece, we can do that. Like, we can have a rotation in that secondary that is going to keep them fresh and going to just continue to build a strength and make it even more of a strength. And like, even though it's a strength, there definitely were things that could be upgraded. So I think it's just going to be so difficult to pass on the Denver Broncos next year. Like, is the best way to help a second-year quarterback to give him more weapons and an actual running game? Yeah. But does making it so that literally all he has to do is like
get back on the field,
simplest thing possible, get back on the field, and like not have to be throwing the ball like 40 times a game because his team is down and the defense can't stay on the field, like that also helps him. So it's a little bit different, but I love the Barron pick. Like I talked about it in a previous episode of like, hey, I would love Jahdae Barron if he fell to 20.
Right.
I had no idea that he would fall to 20. I didn't think that would happen, but I love the pick. I
mean,
just
elite pick. To put it even with you, Jordan, like, because the floor, right, or like the ending of where everybody thought Barron was going to be going was the Dolphins. And I'm curious, like, was that ever in the cards there? And then you can chime in about like Barron, but it was just like there, like if you're really talking about it, like, and you're talking about it from the standpoint of like, there was just no way that this top 10 player is going to be there at 20. Like, was there ever any conversation from Miami? And maybe that was Will Johnson or Barron, but like, was there ever conversation about Miami taking corner?
Yeah, it was, because the future of Jalen Ramsey. If I were to place a bet right now, I don't think Ramsey is going to be playing for the Dolphins this year. So I think Barron to 13 to the Dolphins was very much a possibility.
Yeah.
And once I saw that the Dolphins got Kenneth Grant, which is a good pick, at 13 is a little questionable, but again, picking him at 13, it was like, oh, I guess they're not going to go corner now, because everybody had Barron going there or Will Johnson, and it was more Barron, if anything. But yeah, it was crazy. And then again, like I said, I think if he did continue to fall, it was going to stop right at 19 with the Bucs.
Yeah.
And then obviously the Bucs just completely broke our hearts and drafted a guy that they don't necessarily need. But listen, after watching the McAfee show today, and Jason Light was on the general manager for the Bucs, and he has this folder on draft guys, and he labeled it that guy. And like he listed off on the show like what they need, and like, can they be that guy for the team, like personality wise, attitude wise. It just makes total sense that he drafted like Buka, like just total sense. And it also makes total sense that the Bucs have 38 guys that they drafted play on the team still, which is like the most in the league by far. So I mean, he's a great general manager nonetheless. But I like the Barron pick after I was shocked the night of, and continued to, just get my wits about myself. Because I wasn't mad at the pick at first. I was just very shocked. It was just a shock to me.
I think it was more so shock to really everybody. Like, it was just
I think even like Rap Sheet or Jordan Schultz, like even when they tweeted out the pick, like they even put like shocker. I forgot which one of the two, but
was it Schultz?
Like that's how shocked they were. Like it was just a shock to everybody. But he's a great pick. I'm telling you that now. Again, he is a joker at the corner position. You can move him around everywhere. And again, if one of these guys do go down with an injury, it's not a room that now we have to worry about, like how we did. So.
I will say I will shoulder some of the blame for the Egbuka to Tampa curse, because this is just an ongoing feud that I've had with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for years. 2017 draft, round 3, I wanted Carlos Henderson. Oh no, we took Carlos Henderson. I wanted Chris Godwin. 2 picks after we took Carlos Henderson, Chris Godwin went to the Bucs. So
Carlos Henderson. And Rich Moss did get hurt, and I think some of that had to do with his recovery as himself. Getting healthy and everything, and I think that the other part was we already said his name, and we're not talking about Joe Hendry, but but I think that when you look at Levi Wallace, it was really unfortunate. I think that he didn't play well. Like he didn't. He got tortured in the Browns game, and the rest was history. If you put Barron on this team last year, there's such an impact for those games, right? Like I do think if Riley Moss is healthy, they win that Bengals game. If you put Barron in that game, I think it's venture to say that they probably win that game. They also probably go for 2, by the way. But I will say, I think that he is going to surprise some people, and they're very different corners. I think the impact is going to be somewhat the same. That's just my projection. But like we were, myself included, wanted Justin Fields in that 2021 NFL draft, and we saw PS2, and he turned himself to be the defensive player of the year. So I think that Jahdae Barron has that same kind of impact, if you will, going into, all of this, right? And so I think if you really talk about players, and we always talk about team fits and scheme fits, Barron's going into a really, really good situation, like really good situation. And I think that's really in large part why a lot of people really love these first 2 picks so much, right? Because everybody is talking about team fits and they talk about what are the projections, and the first 2 picks for the Broncos really kind of carry that. And that leads us into that next one with R.J. Harvey. We all had the Travion Hendersons, the Amarian Hamptons, but the Caleb Johnsons. But if you look at it from the statistics, and you actually go through and you look in how much of an offense, right? That it was basically like who was their entire offense. You boil it down, there were 3 running backs who were the entirety of their offense: Ashton Genty, Caleb Johnson, and R.J. Harvey. See that? We get balloons. Isn't this amazing? But R.J. Harvey was the entirety of the UCF offense. So, Brandon, how are we feeling about the Harvey fit and selection for Denver?
I like RJ Harvey. In general, I liked him going into the draft. I just thought he would go later. I didn't think he would go. You'd have to take him in the second round. I thought there were players that we could have taken and he would still be available later, but it doesn't mean I don't like the pick. To me, the RJ Harvey selection, we're able to trade down a little bit, get some more capital. And this even kind of reinforces my opinion of this pick. Is, to me, it was fairly clear, and like obviously this was reported, but Travion Henderson was the guy. Like that's the archetype of Sean.
Yeah.
Well, after Genty, but everyone has after Genty. Travion Henderson was the target. Like he was the kind of running back, the archetype of running back that Sean Payton was going after in this draft. The reason I say that is who was the next closest kind of to that archetype? To me, it's RJ Harvey.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking smaller guy. I mean, RJ Harvey is smaller. Travion Henderson is obviously bigger than RJ Harvey, but who's like explosive and able to be used as a weapon out of the backfield. That's the kind of back that Travion Henderson is. He's only 2 inches taller than RJ Harvey, about the same weight, so they're pretty similar. He's just a little bit taller, and they kind of have that same profile of like that explosiveness. Where the comparison ends is Travion Henderson is the best pass protecting running back in this entire draft class, and RJ Harvey might be the worst. But
I wouldn't say worst, but just it's something he needs to work on.
He just can't do it well. And like, look, he's 5'8". I'm not even holding it against him, but I'll be honest, like he can't pass protect, and maybe he'll get better. But I don't think that's why you draft him. Like Audric Estime, you have him in the backfield, but like that's where the comparison between Travion Henderson and RJ Harvey ends for me. But again, like that's the kind of back. If that's the kind of back you want, Travion Henderson is right there, and then RJ Harvey's next. Like there were people that had him as Chris Sims had him as the number 3 running back in the draft, which is crazy. There were a lot of other people that had him right below Judkins and Henderson. It was those 2 guys, and then it was RJ Harvey. So as much as I think I'm not a fan maybe of where we drafted him, I like the pick in RJ Harvey. I think he's incredibly explosive, and the size concerned me a little bit, but he's yoked up, man. Like he's short, but he's not small. Yeah. Like this guy is absolutely huge. He looks like he's chiseled out of stone.
He's got AJ Dillon quads.
He does. And I mean, he kind of has Barry Sanders quads, who also was 5'8", and I'm not comparing him to Barry Sanders, but the reason I bring that up, like height for a running back is not really that big of an issue, and to be honest, I think it's more of a benefit. They're harder to see. So to me, I think RJ Harvey, even though there's a little bit maybe of questions in the rock of running backs, there's some questions in like can he be your true workhorse? I mean, Audric Estime still exists. Like he's probably going to be our goal line back. He's going to maybe come in for some pass protection because again, I'm sorry, RJ, but you're just not good at it right now. Maybe you'll get better. He probably will get better, but he was not good at it at UCF. But I do think he's a very, very good running back, and I'm excited to see him in this offense. I think it's a great fit. He's a fantastic jump cut, like explosive back, and he's really good out of the backfield. So I like the pick. I really like the pick. Now I'm surprised we didn't double up. I think that would have been my preference. I don't think Audric Estime showed enough to warrant having much of a role in this offense, to be honest. This was such a crazy draft. Like, you have guys like Devin Neal going. I think he went round
he even
5.
No, he went later.
4, 6. I don't know. He went late.
6.
On 6. And I mean, DJ Giddens went late too. So I think you could have doubled up there pretty easily. But in terms of the back that we did take, I really like RJ Harvey. I think he's going to be really fun. He's so fun to watch if you look at him play his tape at UCF. Oh yeah,
turn on that Colorado game.
Sean Payton got another potential Alvin Kamara. He's probably closer to Darren Sproles, but
I don't think so.
I'll still take that.
I'll still take it, but like, he has his Alvin Kamara archetype back, and I'm happy with it. I like what I prefer to Evan Henderson, sure, but he was not going to be there at 51. We would have had to trade up for him, and this is a fine consolation prize for me.
I think the thing is for me, and Jordan, he does everything well except for the pass pro. Now, there is one clip in particular where as long as he's willing and he's willing to put in the work, that's really all that matters. It's like, and he's willing to get better at it too, right? But there is one clip where he's at least noticing and willing to kind of take on that 450-pound defensive lineman from Florida, Desmond Watson. So at least he's willing to take him on and do some pass pro. But Jordan Harvey for you was one of the players you initially were shocked, like Barron, but in probably the span of Sean Payton in like 2 hours, it was quick for you. Like it was quick that you were like, oh wow, this Harvey pick is nice.
And it wasn't because I was wearing my orange and blue lenses, as people would say. It was because I actually got to know I knew of RJ Harvey going into the draft.
Yeah. And
yes, I did do a little bit of homework on him before, because he was one of my guys I was about to write for predominantly orange as well, because I wrote about plenty of running backs.
And a certain wide receiver that we'll get to.
Yeah. And like, just getting to know him, like, he committed to Virginia as a quarterback at first. Mm-hmm. And then he transitioned to a running back, then tore his ACL in 2021, and then came back and just had a monster year. Back-to-back years. Back-to-back. So I think Brandon said it best, and you too, Cam. Like, this is a Sean Payton type running back, and I know people love to compare him to his older running backs like Darren Sproles and a Kamara, which I think are actually good comparisons because they're the same archetype. But I felt something once people started comparing him to Bucky Irving the night of and the day after, because I can also see that.
Yeah. And
if he turns out to be a Bucky, this offense takes a gigantic leap.
I'm the Ray Rice thing. I don't see, but size wise and comparison, height, weight, I can see it a little bit. I really think that the one that they I go through with like 3 of them. Bucky Irving was definitely the one that is, on my list. And I think that he's a bit bigger, obviously the other one that I'm going to kind of compare him to a little bit, but obviously it's Bucky, but Josh Jacobs is one. Like, I think Jacobs is another one of those players that I kind of see in running style. And then Le'Veon Bell, I really think that the Le'Veon Bell style, because I think that the thing for me where I really see it with Harvey is he's patient, and he does that Bell technique, which is he kind of like puts his hand on the offensive line and kind of like has the offensive line like guide, where like the holes are a little bit, and then he He jump cuts and, finds the hole at times. And you see that so much with Bell and Jacobs and specifically Bucky Irving. And the play that really sold me on Bucky Irving was that Wildcat play. And I have a GIF of it. I've shared it before. But like, it's when he scores. I think it's against California, or whoever he was playing. But like, he basically jukes out 3 defenders, in the red zone and takes it in for a score. There is not one player on this roster that can do that. You give me a Bucky Irving type, I very much do think that the Broncos may have hit a home run here. And, and there is 4 running backs that Sean Payton has taken on or before day 3. And that is Mark Ingram, Reggie Bush, Alvin Kamara, and RJ Harvey. And how well did those players work out? Quite well.
Pretty good.
Now, this is the trigger player of the entire draft, mainly because of the person who's, down here on the bottom. But now we have reached the portion of the show where Jordan has a prepared Jay Leno monologue for
That's
us
crazy
on Pat Bryant. So why don't you take it away for us, Jordan, why you hate, and like it's a vitriol hate of Pat Bryant. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, actually, I would actually like to hear Brandon's thoughts on this first, because I may be taking a while, because once I start going, I need people to go first.
That's fair. I was not a huge fan of Pat Bryant, but I understand the vision and I don't hate the pick. And let me explain my thought process here. He did not run quick. Like I think he ran like a 4.640, but he doesn't run slow when you watch him play. Like he's not a slow player. He's just also not like an incredibly explosive player. But this is exactly what we're seeing in the comments too. He is kind of like Courtland Sutton in that he catches everything and he has great body control and kind of does the basketball thing where he goes up and high points it and kind of plays above the rim a little bit. That kind of style of wide receiver. I absolutely think he can be a good X wide receiver in the NFL. And to me, this is the potential Courtland Sutton replacement that if we don't decide to keep him and we're not able to come to like a contract agreement, like Pat Bryant could kind of play that sort of role. We would obviously still need to be adding additional weapons, adding another wide receiver besides that. But just if you're looking to keep someone on the roster that can do that kind of skill set, he ran a 4.6, Alex.
4.6, yeah.
Pat Bryant is a guy that can do that for you. The other thing that I would say stuck out to me is Illinois' quarterback is not good. So I do think that like he was a little like just shafted there because he didn't have a fantastic quarterback throwing him the ball. But I think he's like, for the kind of style of receiver he is, I think he's a good player. I don't think he's not the kind of wide receiver that I wanted. He's not the wide receiver specifically that I would have wanted to take there. I think we took him too high, but I can get behind and I understand the vision for this kind of player. And like, he's like, I mean, we talk about Courtland Sutton and Tim Patrick having like almost redundant skill sets. Like Pat Bryant is your Tim Patrick. Like that's kind of who he reminds me of. Courtland Sutton says just like that kind of X big body, 50-50 balls or more, 70-30 kind of player. And is that what this offense needed? I don't think so, but I don't think it's a bad thing to make sure we still have that on this offense, especially with the questionable future of Courtland Sutton. So I understand the vision for the player. Would I have taken someone else? Absolutely. Do I still think wide receiver is needed on this team? Absolutely. But I don't hate Pat.
See, and look, I acknowledge that. And I would love everybody to know that. Because, man, on social media, and I'm not talking about these two guys here or the other guys I trust and love, but I'm just talking about other people. I mean, I've been getting torched. And maybe it's for right reasons, because I can come off a little, dickish when it comes to this because and wide receiver is my favorite position. I do, talk about it more passionately, I guess is the word that should be used in this. I'm more passionate about the wide receiver part of things. With that being said, listen, I said this in the article that I wrote at Predominantly Orange. I can judge all the players now, but I will all preface and say that we have to see them first perform on the field. So I just want to say that first before what I'm about to say. So I do not absolutely dreadfully hate the pick because I haven't seen him play for the Broncos yet. I've just seen him play for Illinois. But I will say I don't hate the pick. I just dislike the pick because with a top 75 pick, which we had the 74th, and that's where we selected him, I don't think he's the type of player that we should have drafted, especially at the wide receiver position for many reasons. And I will be listing out those reasons. Number one, yes, he is a big body receiver. And I know there is a bunch of opinions on big body receivers and all that. Well, we already have two. We have Cortland Sutton and Devon Vele. And right now, this team is lacking playmaking wide receivers because we struggle with yards after the catch. We do not struggle with big body receivers and catch radius and all that. So that's where it kind of just threw me off a bit when we saw Pat Bryant get selected. That's just number one. Another thing, as I started to even look more into his thing, because I did tweet out his production against the top tier teams, the mid tier teams, and then the lower tier teams. And
by the way, it is accurate that you did put Nebraska as a mid-tier team. I just want to at least
I did because at the time they were ranked when they played Illinois, which was surprising to me actually. Just saying, but
they should have won that game.
With that being said, when I tweeted that out, I knew I was going to ruffle some feathers, but I didn't know I was going to cause war, which is okay. But he did not perform against the top tier teams. And I understand about the quarterback production because I am a big proponent on that because with other wide receivers, I have said the same thing about their production. You have to take the quarterback into account. You just have to. It's a logical sense. But I was told you can't with other wide receivers I used to defend. So now there's a kind of a contradiction there. But I won't go further than that. But there's a contradiction part with that. And then also, I know a lot of people like to say that the Illinois quarterback wasn't good. And once people told me that, like on Twitter, like I just automatically thought of it. But then I had like a couple of Illinois fans actually like DM me and be like, hey, our quarterback, like he wasn't that bad. Like look at his stats. He wasn't that bad. People were just saying that to just kind of defend Pat Bryant, which who we also like, but he wasn't the worst quarterback. Like how they're making it to be.
I don't think he was that good, but if you're an Illinois fan, I understand why you would want to. I don't think he was horrible. I just don't think he was great.
Which I took both sides of it because again, it is an Illinois fan telling me that, so I have to take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
But listen, this Pat Bryant pick obviously did not rub me the right way because obviously I've been very passionate to the point that I did write an 1,100 word article about it. So the first thing is I thought Pat Bryant was a total reach in the third round. A total reach. Many people had him 5th round, 6th round. I know the guy at NFL.com had him at 6th round. Now, does that – I want to use the right words here, but it doesn't matter now because Sean Payton viewed him highly, and that's what matters now is what Sean Payton thinks. So, yes, we can take account to what he thinks, but the general consensus was Pat was a day 3 pick at best. At best. So that was one of my bigger issues right there too. Again, the Broncos wide receiver room is in desperate need of a playmaker and a difference maker. And at 6'3", and that runs a 4.6.
Not a 4.9, by the way, Alex.
Not a 4.9. I'm going to take it there. A 4.6, 6'3", and his yards after the catch are not good. And everybody loves to bring up that Rutgers clip of him scoring the game-winning touchdown, despite them not
Glad it's not the Nebraska clip.
Despite them not realizing that Rutgers defense is awful, and that's keeping it nicely. Just seeing how they took their angles on him. He is not a good playmaker after the catch, from what I've seen. Can he get better at that? Yes, he can. Just like how he can get better at everything else I'm about to criticize him for. But from what I've seen, he's not good at it. And that's okay. But my whole issue with this, taking a player like that with a top 75 pick is not good for me. And I know people love to compare and when it comes to NFL draft. And that's probably one of the most fun parts about the NFL draft.
Fun and toxic.
Yeah, but it's fun. You get to compare this guy to this guy, all that. But he is, and I will say this with great certainty, he is nowhere near, and I repeat, he is nowhere near Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
Is nowhere near, because I've got this in my mention not once, but multiple times. He is nowhere near Rashee Rice.
No,
he's nowhere near those two guys. Now, I understand Sean Payne compared him to his former guy, Michael Thomas, because guess what? Another big body type receiver. Also wears 13 and all that. So I can see that. I don't think he's going to be a Michael Thomas guy because Michael Thomas did other things as well. And just to line up the mood a bit, I think Michael Thomas is just a lot better than a guy like Pat Bryant. Just throwing that out there. But
the one thing I will say, I mean, Michael Thomas ran almost a 4.6. Maybe the whole plan for Pat Bryant is just have him run slants his entire career.
And that brings up to my other part of this whole situation. We do not need guys that do that. Because my God, if I see another hitch and another slant and another drag route from one of these big body receivers, I'm going to lose my mind. Because at the end of the day, when it's 2nd and 8 and Pat Bryant runs a 4-yard hitch to make it 3rd and 4, I'm going to go crazy because our wide receivers need to help Bo out. They need to help him out. And I don't think, in my opinion, Pat Bryant, as of right now, with a top 75 pick, is going to do that day one because he's going to be behind Cortland Sutton and he's going to be behind Devon Vele. Because Devon Vele, everybody in that room loves Devon Vele, right? So he's sitting behind 2 other big body receivers. Because there's no, if we go 11 personnel and the 3 wide receivers are Pat Bryant, Cortland Sutton, and Devon Vele, I don't want to think about it.
Hey, at least you don't have to worry about Michael Burton lined up at wide.
Yeah, because we did have him lining up at wide at one point, which is insane. But to just wrap all of this up, I am not a fan of the big body receiver, especially having already 2 on the roster. And then the other 2 playmakers that we have in the wide receiver room, which is Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims. Now, when you put them on the field, we're just too predictable at that point. You can find a tall receiver that is fast and a playmaker. You can very much find one. You don't have to be that predictable when hand selecting your wide receivers. And this is what my problem is with the wide receiver room. It's just all predictable. And that is not going to play out in Bo Nix's favor. Bo Nix is going to make him look good, though, because he did it last year. He made all the guys in the wide receiver room look a lot better than what they are. And that's just keeping it 100.
Even little Jordan Humphrey, who you love so much.
Exactly.
Final thing I'll say, I do wonder if this just signals that they have a plan for and see Marvin Mims having a very large role in this offense.
Oh.
That being said, there were players I definitely would have taken instead of Pat Bryant in the 3rd round. Like, I love Jalen Noel. I understand maybe he's too similar to Marvin Mims, but like Alec Manor from Stanford would have much rather also taken him instead of Pat in round 3. But again, I see the vision. It can make some sense.
And I see your comment, Alex. But if there is a player on the roster who's going to be playing the little Jordan Humphrey role, it probably would be Trent Sherfield, if anything. And I think Sherfield is actually also going to be a little bit more of a special teamer, than someone that's going to be on offense. But if he as you can see Jordan's reaction there, if he's anything close to little Jordan Humphrey, I think Jordan might actually crash out live on stream.
I'll say this too, because I've seen people compare him to a Tim Patrick, and I understand everybody loves Tim Patrick.
Yeah, Brandon.
I love Tim Patrick when he was a Bronco. I did, but you have to understand, Tim Patrick was an undrafted free agent. If you're telling me our 74th pick, our 74th overall pick is going to be Tim Patrick when his best season was 700 yards, I mean, like, come on. And I'm not saying you have to draft an all-pro receiver with the third round, but there has been a history of wide receivers being selected. And by the way, we passed up on other receivers before because we did trade out of the 51st pick and we traded back again. So we did pass up on those guys as well. But I'm just saying there's talent that you can find that's there. So I also want to say that as well. And I'm telling you right now, when the season comes around, and listen, I am not rooting on the guy's downfall. Just because I don't like the pick doesn't mean I'm rooting for his downfall. I'm not like the other guys on social media that do that because then they can go on Twitter and say, oh, look, I was right. I want to be proven wrong. And I will be the first to admit that I was wrong because I actually like doing it because it's not the first time I'll be wrong nor the last. But I will say, in the season, if our guys can't get open, I'm just telling you right now, there are other guys that could have gotten open because when I've seen of Pat Bryant in Illinois, he cannot create separation consistently. He does utilize his leverage on route running, but that only gets you so far. You need to have a natural ability to route run. And in my opinion, he does not create any type of separation consistently, which is why the big catch radius kind of hides that. But I mean, just because he's a good blocker as a wide receiver and he reminds people of Tim Patrick, I don't think he's worth that top 75 pick. And this wide receiver room needs playmaking, and he does not offer that whatsoever. And I'll end it like this. And I know this is going to be harsh and people are going to question me. I don't think he's even better than A.T. Perry as of right now. And I'll keep it at that.
And that is how you end an article, ladies and gentlemen, or a Jay Leno, Jordan Lopez monologue. That's how you end a monologue. From my standpoint, look, I think this is the beautiful side of the NFL draft because, you're going to get a variety of different opinions. And at the end of the day, there really hasn't been anything for Sean Payton for us to not trust him. And everything that has gone Sean Payton's way has been, for the most part, right. And, we should preface this by saying that Jacksonville, and I'm sure there were other teams than just Jacksonville, badly wanted R.J. Harvey and Pat Bryant. They wanted both of them. And it seemed pretty obvious when they traded up for Pat Bryant and then they got R.J. Harvey. They badly wanted those players. And look, they easily could have taken Mason Taylor, Terrence Ferguson, some of the Elijah Arroyo. I see it's here on Jordan's face. They could have taken these players, but they didn't, and had they taken them, you're missing out on the running back that probably would have been Sean's plan C, right? And that's exactly what just would have happened. Now, could they have redirected and gone down the board a little bit? Sure, absolutely. But I just think that this is going to be fitting well for them. And when I will say this, I do not think this is about Courtland Sutton. They're going to be extending Courtland Sutton. I do believe a deal will be getting done soon. Sean Payton actually, as of late in this year, in this of 2025, certainly seems like the most confident and exuberant when talking about Sutton and that room. I think it's venture to say that a deal will get done soon. My opinion, and it might actually surprise a little bit. I think this is about as much as wide receiver 2 ceiling with Sutton as also much of it is Vele insurance. Because we have to remember Vele, to call it for what it is 26 years old. He is 26 years old. And if you can be able to have a player who can have that wide receiver 2 ceiling and I think have the versatility to play slot and on the outside, it's one of the biggest draws that got me to Emeka Egbuka was he had the ability to do everything. And, Egbuka wasn't the most athletically gifted, right? But yet he was standing at 6 foot tall, and he was able to be a bit of a savvy route runner. I think Bryant maybe not is as savvy a route runner, but I think he could be able to create some separation and get open. And I do think his yards after catch is a bit misunderstood, but I think he can get better at it. I think the Tim Patrick one is a good one. And I think that the idea for him to possibly be in that Michael Thomas role is there, because I think we have to remember what Sean Payton envisioned for Patrick. He envisioned Patrick to be that Michael Thomas role when Patrick was healthy before. Obviously, due to all those injuries, they had to move on from him. And obviously, he's having a decent career now in resurgence a little bit with the Detroit Lions. So I think the Bryant pick is going to be excellent. And look, I'm not a big PFF grades person, but I also love the stats. And for the PFF grades and the college football season of 2024, there was no player who had a higher grade than Emeka Egbuka, Luther Burden, and yes, Las Vegas Raider Jack Besh than Pat Bryant. He was top 10 in the country in receiving grade. So I think the Broncos might have found something in Pat Bryant. So
I hope they did.
Yeah. Before you go, Brandon, because I know that you're kind of swamped a little bit, but you wanted to talk about some of these edge players.
Yeah. So the day job awaits. Unfortunately, I have to continue working, but I will say both of our next picks, Savion Jones and Q Robinson, super, super intriguing. Just in general, Savion Jones is an absolute monster. Like, he's just a big edge player, but I think he can kind of also play a little bit inside. To me, I mean, I do think we're going to be able to find a way to keep both of the pending defensive line free agents highlighted by Zach, but I do think both of these guys are specifically kind of intriguing.
But does this signal the move that we all expect, that maybe they might not extend JFM?
I don't know about that one. But potentially, I do think that we're going to be able to find a way to keep Allen and JFM. But if one of them were to no longer be on this team, I do think JFM would probably be a realistic bet there. I don't really understand why, because we traded for him for a 6th round pick, and all he did was be amazing for us. But I do think, just in general, Savion Jones from LSU, just a super high upside edge player. And I do think they're very different in terms of their profile. Q Robinson from Alabama, not a guy that's played much football. He's kind of raw. But if you saw the interview given by Saban, he, I think, said he was one of the best special teams players he's ever coached, which pretty high praise from Nick Saban there. But I just think both of those are pretty intriguing. I don't really know exactly where they're going to play. I think that they'll probably both end up being edge players, rotational edge players for us. But Savion Jones is just super high motor guy, super violent pass rusher. He's just a good player. And Q Robinson, to me, is kind of that sleeper dark horse, intriguing potential pick at edge. And to me, it's also kind of a little interesting to think about, do we also pay Nick Benito, or what do we kind of have the plan looking like there? So I like both of the next two picks that we had taken when we get past Pat Bryant, and I'm intrigued to see what they do.
Yeah, for sure. Well, make sure you get all that work done, Brandon. I know you got to go. I know you got a dip here, but we'll see you next week.
If I had to just hopping out, give a general grade on the draft, I'd say it's a B. I'd say it's a solid B, maybe B minus, but I think it was pretty good. There were some slight head scratchers, but in general, I like most of the players, and I see the vision with all of the players. So
Yeah, that's good. We'll talk about it more, and we may dive into some of the undrafted pool next week for you, so as we could do a deeper dive. But in the meantime, as we move on, Brandon and Jordan, Brandon, we'll see you next week.
See ya.
Whoop. I hit the wrong button. But as far as moving on, I like Savion Jones, Jordan. I think that he's a high motor player. He's a high motor player. I think he's a high intelligent player.
Mhm.
I do think he actually screams a bit of a JFM replacement down the line. What is he kind of fits the prototype, if you will. He's like 6'5", 6'6", 280 pounds. The way I kind of described him is like if you were to put Shaquille Barrett and like JFM in one body, like they're just a relentless motor with a variety of pass rusher moves, get to the quarterback, and they're a bit of a run defender, right? Like they're a bit of a so I really do think that there's a very much chance that when you look at some of the stuff that can really push this to and obviously Pat Bryant fits this, but I think that if you're going to be talking about like the meat and bones draft, I really do think that Savion Jones and Q Robinson back to back, I think are like the meat and bones of this draft.
Yeah, Savion Jones has. Everybody talks about how he has like tremendously long arms, and that's probably one of the biggest pluses you should have, or you can have, I should say, as a defensive end. But yeah, he just looks like he's gonna fit perfectly into that room, and they'll teach him the ways of stuff. He's for sure a fun pick. And then the Quay Robinson one again had me scratching my head a bit, not as much as the Pat Bryant one, but the Robinson pick was just a little bit intriguing to me. He does have flashes of him being he can potentially be a stud at edge, but it looks like day one he's going to contribute, and that's going to be special teams 100%. And then again, just being in that room with a Nick Benito, Jonathan Cooper, and just the defensive line in general, just being around those guys, I think he'll just get better. And listen, our defense is ferocious, fast, and I think Savion Jones and Robinson will pick that up rather smoothly.
Obviously, I know you see my sneak peek for why Robinson's a bit of a sneaky one. At least I think you saw it. But as far as Savion, I think at the very least, he's going to be Jordan Jackson's replacement. Like if they get a deal done, if they get a deal done with JFM, perfect, love it. But you're going to be deep with JFM, Jordan Jackson. Sorry, not Jordan Jackson. He might make the team, but like you can get Savion Jones, and you get JFM and Malcolm Roach and DJ Jones and Zach Allen with some of those players on the interior. That's nasty. And then you can get to some of those edge players. I think it's great. The part that I think is for people that don't know, and if you listen to 5280, obviously you got a much larger sneak peek, but Q Robinson, Jordan, I'm telling you now, he is not an edge player to me. He is not an edge player for me, like at all. Like he already brings in the special teams value, which is such a huge plus. And Rizzy and Peyton, they love those players. They love and you can bet that is a ringing endorsement from one of the greatest coaches of all time in Nick Saban. And like you see Robinson, he's raw and he can get to the passer, but he's only got one pass rush move, and that's a bit, and so that's a bit, worrisome. Remind you of someone a little bit on this roster?
Potentially.
Drew Sanders. I think he is the Drew Sanders replacement, and even more, I think prototype wise, he's 6'5", he's 241 pounds, roughly the same type of height and weight as Drew Sanders. He loses a bit more. I'm telling you right now, don't be surprised if he is a bit of a tweener. You work through and you can work with him. I wouldn't be surprised if he's going to be the linebacker next to Dre Greenlaw. I'm just saying, like, it is just a theory that I can't get out of my head, and the edge certainly can work, but I just have a hard time that they're not going to be paying Nick Minio, because I think they will, and I think they are going to be paying Zach Allen. So the edge stuff is very much, not in my brain space there, but that is very much like the most fascinating and fun and favorite pick for me is Q Robinson, because of everything that he can add. And in terms of special teams, Sanders has special teams value, but it's not to the level of Q Robinson. And that's one of the reasons why I think that it really puts it over the top with him.
Yeah, no, I see that. I see that vision. And obviously you saying it, I can see it more and more happening. But yeah, there's an interesting offseason for Drew Sanders. Again, when we all selected him, we kind of said, hey, he can just move around the linebacker position, inside, outside. But now we got to know. This is the offseason to know. Because if he's still that floating around, we don't know if he's this or that. It looks like we got others to come just take that spot no matter what. So it for sure adds another element inside that room.
And if you look at it with this next pick, this is kind of where I come about the point of, did they panic or not panic? The Broncos did not panic. And I think it was actually more strategic when you look at it in the landscape of it. And I like the comment in the beginning, because maybe there was a point where this was true to a certain extent, where I believe it was Alex who mentioned that Jahdae Barron changed the entire trajectory of the draft for the Broncos. And I think that certainly might have been the case in the sense of like everything, but it forced them to be a bit strategic. And I think that them getting a punter would issue to the fact that it was a bit strategic, and when you have two punters that are draftable and come at the expense and if you will, complimentary side of Pat McAfee, that's a good thing, And so Jeremy Crawshaw and Burnip being the two best punters and draftable is a good thing for possibly the trajectory of special teams. Crawshaw enters this. We don't need to break it down too much. If you want a really good breakdown, you can go check out Frankie Abbott on X and Twitter, because he does an all 22 breakdown of Jeremy Crawshaw. But punter was a need, and if we're keeping it a buck, there was probably no need as bigger on this roster than punter, and that's even more than running back. But Crawshaw fills a need. He's one of the best punters inside the 20. His average is close to 50. I mean, he's got an absolute cannon of a leg. Rugby style punter, so he fits.
Now imagine that in the Mile High. I mean, that ball is going to be flying.
And he's a young punter too, so there's at least the ability for him to be here a bit longer.
Yeah. So, and also he has tremendous fake ability. So I mean, it's a fun pick. I know punters aren't very much the pick in the whole grand scheme of things, but when you actually get to know the player and understand that he is a fun punter, I mean, in terms of he bombs balls, and also he does have a great ability to, on every single fake you can, whether it's running it or passing it, it makes it a fun pick.
Was he a beloved player and well known down there in Florida?
To be honest, He punted a lot against UM. I can tell you that for a fact. So
that's a good answer. That's a very Miami Hurricanes answer. The last one is the lottery ticket.
it's my guy.
Is the lottery ticket. And if there is two sports that carry the most weight, in my opinion, to the NFL, it is wrestling and a basketball player. I will say, and this is just a very small bunny trail, I'm a little bit surprised that we haven't seen like a hockey player transition to the NFL, because the hockey has so much good balance. Like, to see them kind of be converted to like a running back, I think would be interesting, because of the contact balance and everything.
JJ McCarthy used to be a hockey player.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
Maybe even lacrosse too. Like, but the two most dominant sports that you see is wrestling and basketball.
Yes,
And if there is a position in terms of like fresh football player who's new to it and everything and knows it quite well, it would be Sean Payton. And Jordan, yes, we reference him. Jimmy Graham is the best example of this, because he was new to football at the University of U of M. He goes to Sean Payton, and what does he do? His first 4 seasons, he ends up with 1,000 yards receiving at the position. I don't think it's certainly going to come down to, 4 1,000-yard seasons for Caleb Lawner, but I think we can certainly have an idea of how that conversation took place.
Played football?
No,
Do you like football?
no,
You want to play football?
no.
Great, you can be on our team.
that's exactly how I went.
But you do talk to some people, or you read up on it. Lawner, the projection for him within Utah was really, really high.
The crazy part about it, so when Utah played at Colorado, that's when I was in town in Denver. So I went to the game with my childhood friend. And there's that clip going around where he had that touchdown. He boxed the guy out and went up.
McKinney was a really good CU defender too.
So I remember that happening when I was at the game, because obviously, if a little bit more about me, I'm a basketball player at heart.
Mm-hmm.
And my childhood best friend, we grown up playing basketball and all that. And when we saw that touchdown at first, we were like, he just boxed him out and just like went up and grab it. I mean, it's a basketball thing. And like now, fast forward a few months after, it's the same guy that Sean Payton is intrigued by and said, hey, let's draft this guy. And knowing that he is a former college basketball player as well. And listen, I understand people will look up his college basketball stats and they are not eye-popping to you, but playing Division I basketball is a huge deal. It really is.
Athleticism is athleticism that you can't coach. And so, Jordan, why don't you give us a bit of some insight? You're a basketball coach. Give us some insight when you look at Caleb Lawner and you think of the traits and you look at him transitioning to the NFL. What would you be looking for and for him to really kind of carry that and to be the developmental tight end that the Broncos really have needed to be the heir apparent to Evan Ingram? Because I think that there's a comment and stuff going around that like the Broncos could have taken a tight end later, but at the end of the day, they just needed a developmental tight end with Adam Troutman as tight end too. And Troutman as a tight end too is not that bad. It is not the worst thing in the world when you have Evan Ingram. So, but give us a bit of an insight as you being a basketball coach and you look at, Caleb Lawner's development from basketball to football.
So how I see it, and by the way, I'm still trying to confirm with my old travel ball coach if we did play against them, because we did play travel ball at the same time. So I wonder if I did run into him, because he did look familiar when we drafted him. And I've played with a ton of these guys, so I'm trying to confirm that. But just in terms of what translates from the basketball court to the football field, especially with Caleb Lohner. Watching him play college basketball, actually, he was a very physical guy on the court, if anybody has even seen him play basketball. So I think that's going to translate well when it turns into football, right? I think they're going to teach him all the blocking techniques and all that and the correct way to do stuff and utilize leverage and all that. But in terms of it, like his pure athleticism, I mean, good footwork, right? And that's what you need when you're route running, and especially for a tight end, right? So that for sure is going to stand out immediately, right? So that's one. High pointing the ball and going up and get it. I mean, there's already clips that we've seen on social media, but that is a big trait that not every tight end has. And you can argue that every tight end should have it. Yeah, they should, but only very few possess it. And he's one of those. And it comes from that basketball background. And why is that? Because due to his physicality, he did box out a lot. He did go up and get rebounds. I'm pretty sure in practices and stuff, because I haven't seen it on a college basketball game from him, but I'm pretty sure in practice he can go up and catch lobs and alley-oops and stuff like that. So that does translate really well to the football field. So those type of athletic feats play in really well to football with footwork, high pointing the ball, just stuff like that, physicality. I mean, I think those three are going to play very well with him. And I don't know how many snaps he's going to get year one. Again, he is a 7th round pick. He is going to be a project, but I would not be surprised if later on in the season we see him getting snaps.
Depends on the development, but he is a lottery ticket in the sense of, look, when I say lottery ticket, or when someone else says lottery ticket, or even Jordan says lottery ticket, when it regards to the NFL, we aren't talking about it from the sense of like what you would hear in the NBA, like they bona fide like top 14 pick, top 10 pick, top 5 pick, like it, not lottery pick in that sense. No, it's a lottery pick in the sense of you get him later. He's a talented player, very talented player, where you draft him and you get him early, and you do redrafts, and you're talking about a player that in the first and second round of the draft, they're doing redrafts. That's when that player is going to be, going into is that first and second round. So like that is a lottery ticket in a sense. And so if you're able to work with that, and much like any tight end that is a pass receiving threat, you give him the ability to learn and be a willing blocker on top of that athleticism and everything that he talked about. The sky really is the limit for this, because you're talking about a situation where post Evan Ingram, it is the best of both worlds. The guy is 6'8", ladies and gentlemen. The guy is 6'8". He's 259 pounds, and he ran the exact same 40 as a player who went into the second round, being Terrence Ferguson, who is 6'3" and 250 pounds, who ran a 4.6. Like it is, or he might have been 6'5", but running a 4.69, like that is freakish numbers.
So, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that is the other part. And I was going to mention this later, but I'll just mention now since you transitioned into it. The other part that does translate really well with basketball going to football: size, speed, weight. And what do I mean by that? Your typical 6'7", 6'8" guys in the NFL are stiff. And what I mean by stiff is, I mean, they are great athletes, but when you compare a 6'8" NFL or 6'7" NFL guy and compare him to a 6'7", 6'8" NBA guy or a college basketball kid, it is a drastic difference. And you're gonna tell with Caleb off the bat.
Yeah,
the way he moves his body, it's an instant plus. And I'm telling you right now, there's not a lot of guys out there that are 6'8" and move the way he does, and that's a big part because of basketball. Because at 6'8" and you're a college basketball player, Division I, you're usually covering guys that are 6'10". So you're gonna have to be able to move around a bit and create some leverage, speed wise and agility wise, and he does possess that. So now when you translate that to the NFL, and you're going up against their 6'7" guys or big guys like that. They don't possess that. They're way more stiff compared to basketball guys, and that's just the truth. I'm not being biased in any of that. I have basketball guys that I play with, travel ball in high school that I used to play with, and now they're in the NFL, and you can clearly tell that their basketball background is the reason why they're here now.
Yeah, and Marky, we aren't necessarily saying that Launer will be on the team as far as the 53-man roster. He might be a player that you stash on the practice squad. I will say this though: if the Broncos loved him so much and they do stash him on the practice squad, I feel like the team is going to poach him. That said, though, we aren't talking about a player that's going to be asking for immediate impact. But to that same point, though, he is, as we said, he's a lottery ticket. So it's one where if he works out, you are looking like an absolute genius. But if he doesn't, you're talking about a player, because he was a 7th round draft pick. You can just simply move on and you go find another one, because it was, and so I think that's what makes this so fascinating, because he could either, if there is a coach, I would say to your follow-up point, Marquis, if there is a coach that would probably force a guy to quit football at an early age of the NFL, it might be Sean Payton. So if Launer doesn't exactly work out and he decides to quit football a bit early, it wouldn't be the least bit surprising. It is going to be something to follow, because this is, of all the picks, that is the most fascinating and has probably the most layers to it. If you're looking at the Broncos' entire draft, it's probably Caleb Launer.
I agree.
So, obviously, we're at about an hour and a half. But do you want to touch some of the undrafted free agents a little bit, or do you want to give that to next week?
I mean, we can give that to next week. I mean, I can throw in a little teaser. I do like the 2 wide receivers that they signed. I'm intrigued by the 2 wide receivers that they got.
Yep, they got some interior offensive linemen as well. One with quite a story that we'll not bring up next week. Because it's one of those, if you know, you know.
Yep.
So we'll talk about the undrafted pool next week. And again, we want to thank you guys so much for hopping into the stream. And to make sure you follow both Jordan and myself, and also Brandon was on the show here tonight. Make sure you give them a follow. We do stream all the time on our X Twitter handle, along with YouTube, which make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel of the MHRT Network. We say thank you. The NFL draft is a fun time. It is a projection. That is basically this. All that is. It is a projection. We are perfectly fine having a difference of opinion. That's what makes it, at least at this point, not a wrong opinion, because it's all about projection.
Yep.
There might be some aspects of it that might be wrong, but it's still all about projection, and a variety of different opinions is not a bad thing. So make sure you also follow the show handle as well, at Manely Broncos. And, with it being draft weekend, it seems fitting to relive the greatest Broncos memory of the past 8 years.
Let's go Broncos! God bless Bo Nix!
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast's racking up the flame out. So high, I might never come down.